boss told me to do. All right. The boss is dead here. Epstein's dead. There's nobody she can point the finger to um, that really matters at this point, although she could say unhelpful things to Trump.
Hey folks, and welcome to another jaw-dropping video. He was a conservative lawyer, a lifelong Republican, and married to one of Trump's top senior advisors. He was inside the inner circle, and what he saw there terrified him. This is the story of George Conway, the man who knew Donald Trump better than almost anyone, and his devastating psychological takedown that doesn't just attack his politics, it attacks his very mind. To understand why George Conway's words carry so much weight, you have to understand his unique position. This wasn't a Democratic strategist or a liberal pundit. This was a man who helped form the Federalist Society. He was married to Kellyanne Conway, Trump's campaign manager and counselor. He was, for a time, a supporter.
This is not true. And so what happened with respect to Trump? I mean, I should have selected some stuff to dramatically read, but the upshot basically is she said, I never saw Donald Trump in any circumstance where he did something inappropriate or something like that, very, very vague. And it's like, okay, is the standard for appropriateness of someone who has been convicted of physically molesting young girls and then of assisting a monster like Epstein and trafficking hundreds of, if not, I think over 1,000 girls for his and other men's sexual pleasure and participating in it.
But as he got a closer look, his support turned to concern, then to alarm, and finally to outright opposition. He co-founded the Lincoln Project, a group of never-Trump Republicans with one goal: to use their insider knowledge to warn America. And in this video, Conway delivers one of the most brutal and clinical critiques of Trump ever recorded. Conway's attack is methodical. He doesn't start with policy. He starts with psychology. He labels Trump with precise, damning language: a malignant narcissist, a sociopath.
Who is Trump's criminal defense lawyer?
Who is Trump's criminal defense lawyer?
I mean, it doesn't stop here.
He's threatening Republicans to make sure they don't vote for this. In my opinion, you can trace almost everything Donald Trump is doing, and the boys did not agree with this. And maybe I'm being alarmist, but that's not usually my mode. So I'll take being checked on it. But as far as I'm concerned, part of deploying the National Guard to DC when there was absolutely not an emergency happening.
But his masterstroke is attacking Trump's greatest vulnerability: his self-image as a winner. Conway methodically catalogs every failure. He lists Trump's business bankruptcies, the casinos, the airline, the vodka. He mocks his electoral loss. The word loser isn't just an insult, it's a diagnosis. Then he goes for the strongman image. He highlights Trump's avoidance of the Vietnam draft and his alleged disrespect for wounded soldiers. But the most visceral moment is when Conway attacks Trump's physicality. The orange makeup, he claims, is a mask hiding a, quote, weak, pale, and pathetic body. It's a deliberate attempt to strip away the persona and reveal what Conway sees as the fragile, insecure man beneath.
Let me qualify it in a sense. I think there are mixed motives here. I think that a lot of the things that he has been doing are things he was going to get to. And I think he may have front-loaded them in part, maybe intentionally create a distraction, or more, I think, instinctively to get attention to himself about something other than Epstein. Again, you've heard my spiel about Trump 10 million times, which is he doesn't think in logical progression. He just spins off and does things impulsively. But those impulses are based upon instincts, and the instinct is, I think he has this instinct that he needs to attack somewhere else to avoid being attacked himself. And so the way you attack is you go after all the fake enemies that you always otherwise go after. The Democrats.
This wasn't just about being mean. This was a calculated strategy. The Lincoln Project understood that traditional political attacks didn't work on Trump. They knew his supporters loved when he roasted his enemies as weak and low energy. So they turned his greatest weapon against him. They spoke his language. By relentlessly calling him a loser and weak, they aimed to get under his skin, to provoke a reaction, and to plant a seed of doubt in the minds of his followers. They fought fire with fire, using the language of insult to deliver a serious psychological warning.
But there are a lot of, and then the question is, what does Donald Trump do?
Right.
I mean, if Donald Trump, sooner or later, Donald Trump is going to, if he starts losing, he's going to take everyone down with him. I mean, psychologically, that's what he's going to do. He's not going to want to, he's never going to support somebody who beats him. So it's sort of a difficult situation for the Republicans. They have this man who needs to win at all costs, basically, to stay out of prison. And at the same time, he's such a personality. He's a narcissistic sociopath, and he is not going to let anyone else win without trying to destroy them. And I don't know how this, I don't see what the end game is for any of the challengers to Donald Trump, frankly, because he's not going to let anybody else win.
Yeah, and David, I mean, to that point, I mean, one of the things that happened earlier today was Trump went after
George Conway, a conservative lawyer and outspoken critic of Donald Trump, has issued a stark warning regarding how Trump would react to losing key early contests in the 2024 Republican primaries. Conway suggests that rather than accepting defeat with grace or attributing losses to campaign strategy or voter sentiment, Trump would instantly denounce the electoral process as fraudulent. According to Conway, Trump's political identity depends entirely on projecting an image of dominance and inevitability, making electoral defeat an existential threat. In response, he would aggressively push unfounded claims of rigged elections, ballot harvesting, and corrupt party officials, even in states with transparent and secure voting systems. This behavior, Conway notes, is not new. It mirrors Trump's reactions during the 2016 primaries and his false allegations about the 2020 general election. By refusing to acknowledge legitimate loss, Trump preserves his self-fashioned myth as the true representative of the people, regardless of voter sentiment. Conway cautions that such a response would severely damage Republican Party unity, amplify internal divisions, and potentially lead to a bitterly contested convention or even a party split. Ultimately, Conway argues that Trump's refusal to accept Democratic outcomes isn't just about winning, it's about controlling the narrative, reinforcing his influence, and rejecting any reality where he is not dominant.
Time running as a major party candidate, a convicted felon. And that's what I think he will be that by the time the fall rolls around, because I do think the trial here in the District of Columbia, the January 6th trial, the case brought by Jack Smith just against him before Judge Chutkan here in the district, I think that one's going to go to trial. It's just a remarkable confluence of firsts. I mean, we have the first adjudicated rapist who is going to win a major party nomination, the first person who has been, who is under indictment in 4 separate jurisdictions with 91 counts. I mean, it is just absolutely unprecedented. But with Donald Trump, it's almost inevitable that this was going to happen.
George Conway has repeatedly emphasized that Donald Trump's growing list of legal challenges, including cases involving classified documents, election interference, and hush money payments, is fundamentally altering the dynamics of the 2024 presidential race. Rather than undermining his campaign, Conway argues that Trump has successfully transformed his indictments into a powerful political tool, portraying himself as a victim of a weaponized justice system and turning legal accountability into a rallying point for his supporters. A constitutional lawyer himself, Conway warns that this tactic represents a dangerous erosion of democratic norms, where serious criminal allegations, buttressed by tangible evidence such as insider testimony and documented records, are dismissed as partisan attacks. Trump, he notes, has effectively merged his legal and political strategies, using court appearances as campaign stops and turning his mugshot into merchandise.
They want to just basically assume the facts that they think are true. They don't want to think. They're not interested in evidence. But I think another thing that's going on here, I think a lot of this is that people don't want to admit that they were wrong about Donald Trump. They don't want to admit that he's a bad person, because if they admit that he's a bad person, then they, by extension, are admitting that they are not good people for supporting him, or at least it tarnishes them in their own eyes. So they have to.
Conway cautions that this unprecedented situation, a major candidate undergoing multiple criminal trials while running for president, risks destabilizing public trust in legal institutions, regardless of the outcomes. He concludes that a Trump victory in 2024 would not signify innocence, but rather the troubling ability to evade consequences, setting a perilous new precedent for the future of the rule of law in America.
He thinks he stands in the election.
He is a decompensating, narcissistic sociopath. He is a very unwell person. I've been saying this for years. If you go through you don't want to diagnose him, but I think if you look at the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, he fits every single one of them. It's like the criteria were made to describe him, and we can observe that just from 1 week, but we've been observing it now for 7 years. And what happens to these characters, and these are the type of people who become cult leaders, authoritarian dictators. These kinds of people ultimately go too far, and they destroy.
George Conway, a constitutional lawyer and former Republican insider, has been an unrelenting critic of Donald Trump's promotion of unfounded conspiracy theories and what he characterizes as dangerously unstable conduct, arguing that such behavior poses a severe threat to both democratic institutions and national security. Drawing on his legal background and political experience, Conway asserts that Trump's actions represent far more than mere rhetorical excess. They constitute a deliberate strategy to undermine truth, public trust, and the foundational norms of American governance. He has specifically highlighted Trump's embrace of baseless claims, such as the assertion that the 2020 election was stolen through elaborate fraud involving manipulated voting machines and foreign interference, noting that these assertions are not just false, but are knowingly fabricated to sustain a narrative of victimhood and consolidate power.
It can become psychotic. And I think what we saw with this tweet yesterday is that last final collapse of Donald Trump's mental state. I mean, you think about it, saying that those were like 50, 60, 70,000 people in the aggregate in five rallies in different states. Jonathan Chait put this, of New York Magazine, put it this way today. It's like, that's loopier than saying that the moon landings were staged, because there were tens of thousands of people were there, and there are hundreds of people taking photographs and videos. To think that is crazy, and to try to sell it to people is just as crazy. He's done. His brain is fried.
Conway has also expressed deep concern over Trump's increasingly authoritarian rhetoric, including his stated willingness to act as a dictator on day one and pursue retribution against political opponents, warning that such language cannot be dismissed as mere hyperbole and instead reflects a tangible threat to democratic order. He contends that the cumulative effect of these falsehoods is to erode confidence in electoral systems, incite political violence, and normalize extremist ideologies, a dynamic vividly illustrated by the January 6th Capitol insurrection, which Conway views as a direct consequence of Trump's sustained campaign of disinformation and division. In Conway's assessment, Trump's consistent rejection of reality, contempt for the rule of law, and disregard for constitutional principles render him fundamentally unfit for office. For Conway, sounding the alarm is not a partisan act, but a moral and civic obligation, one meant to highlight what he sees as an existential assault on American democracy itself.
From him.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes, I remember how during the first Trump administration, there was a big deal about how people were renting ballrooms at the Trump Hotel, which is now the Waldorf Astoria down on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Which is great, by the way, now. The new Waldorf Astoria.
It's lovely.
They got a great Jose Andreas joint in there that's really nice.
And that's bupkis compared to this stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
It feels like we're not talking enough about the...
On May 3rd, 2025, George Conway, a highly regarded attorney and one of Donald Trump's most penetrating and persistent critics, delivered a methodical and deeply critical analysis of what he termed the dumbest fight Donald Trump ever picked. A confrontation Conway framed not merely as a tactical blunder, but as a self-inflicted wound with profound legal and political consequences. Appearing on a major news network, Conway meticulously broke down Trump's latest and most volatile confrontation, an impulsive and publicly waged feud with the Department of Justice concerning a sealed indictment related to his handling of classified documents, a case Trump had boldly and prematurely vowed to crush like a bug even before the specific charges were formally unveiled. This isn't just arrogance, Conway asserted with characteristic clarity. It's a masterclass in how not to handle a federal prosecution, particularly for someone who is already a convicted felon and remains under the shadow of multiple other serious legal proceedings. Conway carefully reconstructed the timeline of events. Eager to project an image of invincibility, Trump launched an aggressive Truth Social campaign in which he attacked individual prosecutors, disparaged the presiding judge, and condemned the FBI, labeling the case a hoax 2.0 and openly threatening to end the DOJ as we know it should he be re-elected. In an even more theatrical escalation, Trump organized a rally directly outside the courthouse, effectively transforming what should have been a sober legal process into a raucous political spectacle, a move Conway witheringly described as a political circus with a subpoena count. What made this particular battle so uniquely foolish, Conway emphasized, was the overwhelming strength of the physical evidence arrayed against Trump, including documents bearing his own fingerprints, handwritten notes demanding extreme secrecy, and surveillance footage clearly showing boxes being moved in and out of storage.
The Biden economy, even though last year he was claiming that the economic boom in the stock market 2024 when he wasn't president was due to him, the anticipation of him becoming president, he's going to get blamed for all this. And the flip side is going to be, a la the kinds of things that Navalny and his people were putting out in Russia in past years before Putin killed him, is the story of the contrast between the graft, the corruption, the self-indulging attempts to self-enrich of the people in government and their cronies versus what's happening to Americans in the grocery stores, in their workplaces, and in their checking accounts.
You don't fight facts with memes, Conway remarked pointedly. You fight them with lawyers, but Trump fights them with hashtags. Conway argued that this fight stood out as the dumbest precisely because it was not forced upon Trump. Rather, he charged into it recklessly and of his own volition, ignoring the Council of Advisors, alienating potential allies within the legal and political establishment, and ultimately handing prosecutors a compelling narrative of deliberate defiance and obstruction. He could have fought quietly, Conway explained. He could have filed motions, mounted a legal defense, and allowed the courts to decide. Instead, he turned it into a very public war, making himself the central villain in a story fundamentally about national security and democratic accountability. Beyond the immediate legal jeopardy, Conway also detailed the broader political ramifications, cautioning that Trump's relentless strategy of attacking institutions rather than mounting a substantive defense was corrosive to public trust in the justice system, even among his own supporters. He's not just risking prison, Conway warned. He's risking the rule of law, and once that's gone, it doesn't matter who wins elections. Speaking with the disillusioned authority of a former Republican insider once married to Trump ally Kellyanne Conway, George Conway concluded with a sobering reflection. I know how this playbook works. But this isn't strategy. This is self-sabotage with a red hat. He ended by urging viewers to see through the inflammatory rhetoric, reminding them that the man isn't being persecuted, he's being held accountable. And the fight he picked, he's already losing it, not in the courtroom, but in the court of common sense. Thanks for watching the video, and please do not forget to subscribe.